I'm Rachelle Wabissa. I study applied social studies and I'm a final year at the University of Bath. I am also a race equality campaigns officer. So, yeah, it's a little bit about me, I guess.
Cool, cool. And why do you want to be president?
I want to be president for a lot of reasons because I've engaged at university in so many different things. I've campaigned for culture appropriate support, and I've been in meetings for support for disability students and international students. And every single time I've been in these meetings and these decisions are being made, there's no one who is like us in there. And I thought I wanted to, and when I was thinking about it, I was like, oh, should I run? Should I run? And I was looking through the history and seeing if somebody like me has ever run before. And there was no one, and then it clicked. The reason why I didn't feel like some of the policies and some of the experiences reflected people like me is because people like me have never been in the room. So I thought, well, just run, because if you can't just say you want change when you're not willing to put yourself in the positions to make the change. So yeah.
Cool. So what are the three biggest differences that students will see next year with you as president?
I think the three biggest things. So one is probably, because my manifesto has 3 points. So the one thing is probably the main thing would be the changes I'd make would be things that everybody would feel and not actually have to be would just know, how to explain this. The one thing, I guess, the biggest thing people would feel the changes, because the things I'm going for are very daily hassle things that students kind of face in the university journal. And the second thing would probably be mental health would be a very important part of my entire campaign, making sure students understand how to reach out for help, understand what how to navigate university to get what they need, not what they think they're supposed to have. And the third thing, I definitely feel in terms of representation for sexuality, I feel the biggest changes is that students will feel like they can express themselves in terms of their gender identity in a way that's on their terms.
Cool, good stuff. So moving on now, so your manifesto focuses, as you've said, on those three fairly narrow issues and doesn't mention plans for handling SU finances, holding the university to account, or issues surrounding housing or sustainability. Why are these issues, which are central to the role as SU president, why do they not feature in your manifesto?
So my manifesto went through 6 drafts, 6 actual drafts. So I had a focus group of students from lots of different places at the university, at degrees and things. And we worked until everybody agreed on all the things on the manifesto. So the reason why those things are not on is because, well, those are already going on. As soon as I'm SU president, I'm going to have to do those things. They're going to be my responsibility, the finances and, and how the university manages them and lobbying him to continue the changes that the people before me have done. And I thought, well, my manifesto is meant to be about what I want to add to the table. It's not just me parroting what everybody else has done before. And I thought, let's focus on what I want to focus on, and I'll still commit to continuing what other people have done and continue to fight for.
So on those issues of finance and holding the university to account and housing and sustainability, would you just continue what's been done this year?
I mean, of course I would continue, but also with the vaccine being rolled out, and obviously we don't know what the future is going to hold for us. I think I'll definitely continue, but also be very wary of what the changes that are going to happen in the next few months as we transition out of the pandemic national lockdown.
Right. Cool. So next question. So Bath is highly regarded as a university academically, and our competitors in the Russell Group will not continue with any kind of no detriment policy past this year. Wouldn't extended no detriment policies and measures damage the reputation of our university, devalue our degrees, and eliminate our job prospects in what will already be a challenging job market for graduates?
So when I say I want to expand on the non-detriment policy for after the pandemic, I'm really focusing on things that have made a big change to students' lives this year. Things like no extension, no evidence needed for extensions has really made, especially, well, coming from my experience, my mom got cancer randomly during the assessment period, and I had to, if I had to give evidence for everything, I wouldn't have been able to go home and take care of my family. And I want to extend those things instead of bombarding students with all these documents I have to fill in. I think the non-detriment policy is amazing, and I'm glad that we had it. And I want to continue some elements of it to make sure that people still feel like they can do their degrees.
Right. And do you not think that that would devalue a Bath University degree? Someone, a university that holds itself to the standards of the highest institutions in the country?
I feel like things like extension evidence being taken away and people being able transparency about negotiating a mandatory units and like moving units and things like as evidence for mitigating circumstances, just writing a cover letter of experiences. I don't think those things are going to undermine the university's levels. I just feel like it's going to make sure that the people who are suffering in silence and not able to find the words to say what's going on in their life can get the support that they need. Because what I found, especially in my experience in my 4 years of that here, is that all that paperwork, all it does is make you relive your trauma over and over again for no reason. And it's like, why do we need to do that? And I think my definition of extending the non-detriment policy is more about making the daily hassles as easy as possible. It's not about giving people the grades without making them work for it. It's about giving them the time to process what's going on inside and then approach the assessments when they are ready and able to do it. I think that's going to benefit people in the future, because it's like you're going into the job market with good mental health and you've received the support that you got. And I think that's going to make us even more amazing, because it's like, hey, our students graduate and they have great mental health because they took time to seek the support that they needed. How would that undermine us with other universities? I don't know, but I feel like that's a good impression that I want to give, that Bath cares about mental health and that comes first before your degree.
Cool. So moving on, why should SU officers who are not qualified counsellors be a first point of contact for students who need to be signposted to support? And under the mental health activities section of your manifesto, when the SU has trained staff in advice and support for this very reason.
So the second point about the weekly tea and chats with students, it's I feel like when it comes to university, especially when I was thinking of when I was like in the process of running as a resident, what I found is like I didn't really know what the roles involved. Like I did lots to do lots and lots of research, and I felt so disconnected from the actual SU. And I feel like weekly chats from SU officers basically talking about how they're managing their mental health and what they're getting involved in at the university gives people a bit of more of a connection, because over half of students don't really, well, according to ONS anyway, over half of students don't feel like they're part of community. And I think having like that signposting of somebody who is here to represent you, just talking to you, updating you like on that regular, more consistent basis can be meaningful. I'm not saying that we're going to magically become therapists, but I'm saying that if more transparency about what SU officers are doing, what they are doing for their mental health and also in their career, would really help people feel like they can be part of the community because they're being told about what's going on.
Completely understand that. Do you not think your time as president would be better spent working with the university and lobbying the university to secure more mental health support from trained professionals?
Of course, and I've done that. Like in my experience of lobbying the university for culture appropriate support and also working towards make sure that if whatever happens to you, you can get somebody who's qualified to talk to you. I found that there's a massive disconnect in like students don't know what happens in the background to make that happen. They don't know what's available to them, and I think you can do both. It's not like either or the other. You can still talk to students and actually like give them opportunities to talk to you in a more like less formal setting and less like joining to be an academic rep or officer councils. Like you can do that. You can talk to students and inform them what's going on, and also lobbying the university, because it's just kind of like closes the loop rather than being like in silos where all you're doing is lobbying the university and you're like, fighting this, but it's like if you're not talking to the people you're fighting for, then why are you doing this? You're not really lobbying the university for students, you're lobbying it for other people who may or may not agree with how you're doing things. So I guess to summarize, I feel like you can do both. You can talk to students weekly, update them about what's going on and be transparent about what you're doing for your mental health, and you can lobby the university to give better counselling, to show students how they can request more counselling if the one they're given wasn't enough. Like I think we don't have to pick or choose, we can have both.
Cool. Good stuff. No follow-up questions there. I'll just move on to the kind of last section of our interview, which is focused on issues kind of external to the SU, but that heavily affect the organisation and us as students. And the first one of those is that the government is taking action to ensure that free speech on university campuses across the country with SU central to this debate. Do you think there are issues surrounding free speech in higher education? And what's your take on the government's action here?
I think there's a lot of issues when it comes to free speech, and free speech can easily become free, say whatever you want without consequences, very easily. And I think when it comes to this, it really depends on the context, and it depends what the student community wants. Because again, as SU president, it's not my duty to tell students what they can or cannot say, but it would be my duty to make sure that people know that there's consequences to certain types of actions. And it's like, I don't know. It's very difficult to kind of think about it now because we're kind of transitioning out of a lockdown, and like freedom of speech is changing, and that people are being more aware of what's going on in the world, and wanting to kind of say those things. So I guess my answer to that question is it would really depend on what the students want and what do they feel as a community is freedom of speech and is not. And I think if it comes to a situation where we invite somebody who does not, who most of the students disagree that should be on campus, and we'd have to listen to the students. And I hope that answers the question.
It does a little bit, but I will push you for a specific on the government introduced a free speech champion. Do you think that was a good move or not?
Okay. Honestly, it really depends. I would love a free speech champion if they are trained and they know about the different nuances of culture and diversity and inclusion and those kind of things. But if it's just like a free speech champion who represents a specific kind of like uh, agenda, then I'd be challenging. Because again, to be honest, like I'm Black, so I'm kind of like wary of what this is going to mean for people like me, because I'm quite a minority. But at the same time, when I think of it as like SU president and student wise, it's like a free speech champion would be good, but that person would need to be very well connected within the institutions that they're representing and actually talking to lots of different people. I wouldn't want them to just be working in like silos. Like, yeah.
Cool. So, considering free speech more broadly with this question, the oversight of student media is within the president's remit, yet your manifesto doesn't make any mention of it. Would you support media's editorial independence and free speech on their platforms while you're president?
I think definitely. I feel like when it comes to media, it's very much underused in what it could do and how it can build communities. Like, in terms of finances for SU wise, like, the pandemic has made it very clear that pubs can easily come and go. So we should really look at looking at other passive ways of income. And I think as SU president, how I support the media and their independence is kind of like doing what we can to make sure that they can start monetizing our channels and making sure that the content is being spread out throughout the university and there's more awareness for it, because that's the only way we can communicate with such a because everybody's spread out everywhere. We need to have something that's connecting all of us. And yes, I would definitely continue with supporting the media team and their independence and making sure that they get the publicity that ensures that all students know what's going on.
Cool. Brilliant. So moving on then, as you mentioned there, the SU is facing a huge financial problem as a result of this pandemic. Which areas and activities would you prioritise and which would you cut in your time as president?
I would definitely prioritize cultural and mental health kind of support, like things to do with mindfulness and supporting students, and obviously sport. I don't know in terms of what I'd cut, because again, I I feel like we could probably find a midway ground to make sure that we still continue the diverse sections of just ways that students can engage with university. So I think when it comes to that decision, I don't have the finances with me right now. Like I don't. I would really need to go into it and look at it and maybe consult with people who've been here for years. And when I was speaking to one of my line managers, because I work for Enterprise Bath, because they went through my manifesto and things, and they've been at the university for so long. I was getting advice from them and how that would work. And I think in terms of finances, I would need to see the paperwork first and see what we can do, what we can't do, what students feel like, no, this is what we have to have. And then I would need to look at finding ways to get passive income through. That doesn't matter whether or not people are passive incomes that don't rely on whether or not a pandemic is happening or not, and kind of explore those options. So that's kind of like how I would approach that.
Cool. So you wouldn't make any cuts, you'd avoid cuts. And quite a bit of a politician's answer there, but if possible,
I,
fair enough.
when it comes to, okay, one real answer, I think when it comes to cuts, I'm not good. It's like when you have like somebody who comes in, doesn't know the environment, doesn't know what's going on, doesn't know how the people work, and doesn't know the culture, just comes around and does cuts. Like there's going to be consequence to that. And I feel like for me, again, working with the community and asking what's working, what's not, and doing really good research and understanding like what students feel like needs to be improved, then you can start making decisions like cuts. Like I just don't feel like it's appropriate to me going like, I'm gonna cut this, I'm gonna cut this, I'm gonna cut this, and then people from the community is gonna be like, you don't even know what we do for people. I don't want that. I want people to feel like we listen to them, and we want them to feel like the things that they value that makes them feel like they belong at Bath will not be destroyed by somebody who just thinks, I'll cut everything to save money. So yeah, meaningful connection with students and understanding what works for them and what doesn't, and then working from there.
Cool. I promise I won't ask again, but that sounds like a very reasonable answer. And just to follow up there, the SU received around £300,000 from the university for Freshers Week and the construction of East Village this year, with Freshers Week receiving less engagement than years prior, and East Village struggling to fill seats for the weeks it was open. Do you believe this was a wise use of money? And given the university's track record of frivolous and misguided spending, do you think the university should cover the SU's shortcomings until it recovers from the pandemic?
Definitely. I think I think the university should definitely cover those expenses, because we need to work together, and not in a, oh, the university is doing for it, not like in that section. It's just like we need to work together. The university needs us because we have student voice and we know what students need and want, and students are willing to come to us about what they need. And the university has the services, they have well-being, their student services, they have all these things. And I think in terms of covering it, I think it's important because we just need to work together. It's not about attacking and causing blame and saying, oh, did this and work out. That's already happened. All we can do now is work together and move forward. So if I approach it in that way, it doesn't seem like, oh, the university should do this. It's like when people have to do something, it never works out the way you think it's going to work out. But when you approach it in a way like, this has happened, it sucked. What are we going to do to make sure that we work together to make sure that next time it's a lot better? And that's kind of like how I want to approach it.
Sure. So, I mean, the SU is facing a £210,000 shortfall this year. Would you ask the university to pick that up and cover it?
I think it's definitely something I would put on the table for the university, and at the same time, because again, Enterprise Bath and working with all these mentors and business people and things, I think it's time that the student union also started like seeking mentorship from people who run businesses and seeing like how other businesses have been successful. Obviously, student union is a charity, but like other like spaces have been successful in like making money through a pandemic. And so yeah, I think I'll put it on the table to ensure that we fight for the university to support us any way that they can, but at the same time also look at like other streams of income that the student union can like look at and like engage with to ensure that we're not always depending on the university, because when the university gives us money, there are terms and conditions that we have to kind of like ensure that we're going onto it. And I think looking at more independent streams so we can have our own pot of money that is like by us, and we can like add value to students, not at the terms and conditions of the university, but the terms and conditions of the actual student body and the voice.
Cool. Moving on then, and thanks for answering those questions. What's your stance on NUS, the National Union of Students, and should the SU remain affiliated or not?
I thought about this. I've been thinking about this quite a bit actually, because honestly, students are going to vote and students are going to make a decision, and whatever decision they make, I will support it. I myself will be voting, and I will not say who I'm voting or what, I whatever, because I don't want to like like make people feel like I wouldn't, if it doesn't go the way I want it to, I wouldn't support them. And I feel like the NUS is great, and it also has shortfalls like any other institution, and it's up to the student union students to decide whether or not we continue with it, and I will support it.
Fair enough. Do you really think it's justifiable, though? I'm pushing you for an answer here, but do you really think that £30,000 affiliation fee is justifiable when we're under such financial stress?
Again, people are going to vote on this. Students are going to vote on this. If students do not feel it's justifiable, they will vote against. They will. I feel like for me, I'm waiting to see what students want. Because again, as SU president, I'm here to say the student voice and support them, and obviously I have my own opinions. But at the end of the day, like, if I'm pushing my own agenda and what I feel is important, like, I could easily get lost in source and no longer represent students' voices. So honestly, I don't know. Depends what students want, and what I personally believe doesn't really matter because I'm here to represent them, not myself.
Cool. Well, fair enough there. Thanks, Rachelle. That's all the questions that I've got for you. Is there anything else you'd like to say to our watchers and listeners before we end the call?
Honestly, I feel like this whole experience of running First Year President has definitely taught me quite a lot about how things are and how things could be. And I think for anybody watching this and like listening to what I say, I think I know that things can be a lot easier because I have navigated every single part of this university. Like, I know what is and what is not possible because I've worked university. I'm careers ambassador, Set Squared ambassador, well-being. I'm a gold scholar, Lloyd scholar. I'm all these things, so I know what is possible, and I know how to get what students need in a way that's actually going to be meaningful and not a superficial level. And I think that's what I could bring to the table. And I don't know, it's a good experience though.